Join me by the candlelight. Flight 66, written by Bonnie Bailey 63, narrated by Tales to Chill. It had been ages since she'd been home for a visit, much longer than she cared to remember. She had decided to fly this time as the drive was a good 12 hours at minimum. "Aren't you afraid to fly, dear?" her husband John asked. John had been terrified of planes since he saw a horrific crash at JFK as a child. "I'm a bit anxious, but it's much faster than driving, and you know I get sleepy on a long drive," said Hannah. She would have to take a charter to Atlanta Airport and fly from there. This part she dreaded. She had flown out of Atlanta before, and the staff made the saying "Southern hospitality" seem like a twisted joke. But unless she wanted to pay an outrageous price and drive to Nashville, Atlanta was her only option. She had made it to Atlanta, and now surprised to get the same rude treatment as before. She made her way to Terminal 34, Atlanta to Detroit. The flight number made her a bit uneasy though. DL-66. Hannah thought to herself, at least it's not 666. The people slowly filtered in, and Hannah put in her earbuds to drown out the noise. She had been listening to a new audiobook, so she figured now was a good time to go back to it. It would be about another 20 minutes until boarding, so she tried to relax, but she felt a strange uneasiness. The weather had been clear, but they were expecting a mild storm to come through from the west. Sure enough, right before boarding, the rain started. It was the standard boarding pattern: active military first, then disabled or others needing assistance, then first class. After them, it was people traveling with small children, and so on. Hannah made it on board. She put her carry-on in the overhead compartment and took her seat. Surprisingly, this flight wasn't fully booked, so she was hoping she had this section to herself. She made sure she had an aisle seat, as she couldn't stand to be by the window. Just as she was getting comfortable and getting absorbed into her audiobook, she felt a slight tap on her shoulder. There stood an elderly gentleman who reminded her of a teddy bear. "Excuse me, ma'am. I'll have the window seat," he said. She got up and let the man through to his seat. All the standard announcements were made, and then takeoff. It would be a relief when they reached the right altitude, and Hannah was hoping they would reach smooth air. The turbulence was tremendous, but eventually they leveled off, and finally the turbulence stopped. She looked over at the elderly man by the window. He hadn't said 2 words since takeoff. He just sat there, staring at the window. The stewardess came by offering the usual amenities. Hannah took a glass of Coke. The elderly man just shook his head a quick no. It was about a 2-hour flight. About 20 or 30 minutes in, the man said, "Excuse me, please. I need to use the restroom." Hannah got up to let the man out. She didn't know when, but at some point Hannah dozed off. When she woke, she looked towards the window seat and the elderly man was still gone. About 30 minutes had passed and the man still hadn't come back. She started getting concerned, so when the stewardess passed, she inquired about the man. The stewardess said she would check the restroom to make sure he was okay. The stewardess passed quite a while later, and Hannah asked about the man again. The stewardess said she checked the restroom and it was vacant. "How can that be? Where is he?" Hannah asked. "I'm sure he probably just took another seat back there," said the stewardess. Curiosity was getting the best of her, so Hannah decided to take a stroll to the restroom to see if the stewardess was right. All the way towards the back, Hannah scanned the seats, looking for the old man, but he wasn't in any of the other seats. She started to think maybe it was a dream. Maybe she had dozed off and dreamt of the old man. She made her way back to her seat and automatically looked towards the window seat. There was the old man's hat, an old fedora with a small feather in the brim. She knew now that he had been there. He was real. But where was he? She stopped the stewardess again and told her she walked towards the back and the old man wasn't there. The stewardess tried to assure her everything was fine, but Hannah insisted that she look for the man. After a silent search, the stewardess was concerned that the old man was nowhere to be found. She went to a senior crew member and told him what was going on. Just as they were walking towards the cabin, a passenger inquired about the lady sitting next to her. The lady had said she was going to the restroom and hadn't returned yet. The two crew members decided to check the restroom. Just then, they hit bad turbulence. The seatbelt light came on and everyone was ordered to their seats. As soon as it was smooth, the crew members headed back towards the restroom. "What is going on?" the stewardess asked. There were several people back here. The seats towards the rear of the plane were empty. The rear of the plane was very cold. There was a strange feel in the air. They decided to check the flight manifest, and sure enough, several people were now missing. They decided it was time to tell the pilot. He told them to go back and check the overhead compartments and seats again and give him a full report. All the passengers' belongings were still there. The only thing missing was the passengers. There was a strange glow coming from the back of the plane and seemed to be working its way forward. Every time they hit bad turbulence, more passengers disappeared. At 11:20 p.m., flight DL-66 started its descent. It landed on time at Detroit Metro. The landing was smooth with no problem, except no one was on board. No passengers, no flight crew, absolutely no one. What happened to the crew and passengers of flight DL-66? Your guess is as good as mine.